Alright, folks, picture this. You're flipping channels and suddenly land on the wildest pay-per-view showdown Mother Nature never intended. In one corner, we've got the Silverback Gorilla, a jungle heavyweight with arms like tree trunks and a stare that could stop traffic. In the other, the polar bear, the Arctic's apex predator, wrapped in fur and fury, with a paw the size of your dinner plate. Sounds like something straight out of a comic book, right? Now, of course, these two titans would never meet in the wild. One rules the steamy rainforests of Central Africa, while the other dominates icy, windswept tundras. But just for fun, just for the sheer muscle flexing, what if we're diving into a fantasy face-off to figure out who'd come out on top if these two ever threw down? As a wildlife nerd who spent more hours than I'd like to admit watching gorillas chest beat and polar bears stalk across the ice like fluffy tanks, I can tell you this isn't just a clash of claws and muscle. It's brains versus brute force, agility versus armor, forest fists versus Arctic fury. We're going to break it all down: size, speed, survival tools, and by the end, you'll know who's really the king of the wild. Let's get ready to rumble. 1. Physique and defense, jungle bodybuilder versus Arctic tank. Let's kick things off with pure power and protection. Think of the Silverback Gorilla as the jungle's version of a heavyweight UFC fighter. This beast tips the scales at around 400 pounds, stands up to 6 feet tall, and has an arm span that could give LeBron James a run for his money, about 8 feet across. It's been compared to a living hydraulic press. This is the guy you don't want to arm wrestle. But it's a big but gorillas have a bit of a weak spot. Their skin is surprisingly human-like, soft, thin, and vulnerable. All that power doesn't mean much if a razor-sharp claw or a massive canine gets through to soft tissue. Now enter the polar bear. This is less of a fighter and more of a walking snowplow with claws. These giants can weigh up to 1,500 pounds and stand close to 10 feet tall on their hind legs. Imagine a grizzly, but supersized and wearing a winter parka. Their thick blubber and fur aren't just for staying warm in the Arctic chill, they act like a natural shield. Underneath all that fluff is skin so tough it's practically battle armor. Polar bears aren't just big, they're built like tanks. While the gorilla is more agile and certainly no pushover, the polar bear's sheer size and natural defenses give it a serious edge. It's like pitting a linebacker against a sumo wrestler wearing body armor. Sure, the gorilla might land a solid hit, but the polar bear can take it and then hit back twice as hard. 2. Speed and agility, jungle ninja versus Arctic assassin. Now let's talk speed and moves. You might not expect it, but that beefy silverback gorilla can hit top speeds of around 25 miles per hour. That's faster than most people drive through a school zone. And when it comes to movement, this guy is like the Spider-Man of the forest. He doesn't just walk, he swings, climbs, and bounds through trees like it's second nature. In the jungle, he's a four-limbed parkour master. On the flip side, the polar bear might look like it's built for slow motion, but don't be fooled. These Arctic beasts can also hit 25 miles per hour, but only for short bursts. It's like watching a refrigerator on legs suddenly turn into a sprinter. The real magic, though, happens in the water. Polar bears are marathon swimmers. We're talking miles and miles without a break. If this fight were happening in a frozen ocean, the gorilla wouldn't even make it to round 1. But here's the catch: put that same bear in a dense jungle or a hand-to-hand duel on solid ground, and suddenly the tables turn. The polar bear's bulk starts working against it. It's less agile, slower to pivot, and let's face it, not built for dodging punches or swinging through trees. In terms of agility and raw body control, the gorilla takes this one. It's like comparing a gymnast to a linebacker in snow boots. The gorilla moves with precision and speed, while the polar bear relies more on stamina and strength. If this battle goes into overtime, the bear has the lungs for it, but the gorilla's got the footwork to keep things interesting. 3. Natural weapons and combat skills, steel fists versus death claws. Now this is where things get brutal. We're talking about built-in weapons, the kind nature forged over millions of years of evolution, not something you pick up at a sporting goods store. Let's start with the gorilla. This guy's arms are basically tree trunks with fists attached. A silverback's punch can shatter bone. That's not an exaggeration. Imagine getting hit by a sledgehammer wrapped in muscle. Add to that a bite force somewhere between 900 and 1,300 psi. That's powerful enough to crush coconuts or your average femur. But here's the catch: gorillas have a flat facial structure, which actually makes it harder for them to land a clean bite in a fast-paced fight. They're more about intimidation and power slams than precision biting. Now meet the polar bear's toolkit. Those claws are no joke, nearly 4 inches long and sharp enough to slice through thick hide. One swipe could open up a seal like a can of tuna. And that bite? It clocks in around 1,200 psi, putting it right in heavyweight carnivore territory. What really sets the polar bear apart, though, is experience. These bears aren't just strong, they're killers by trade. They stalk, they ambush, they finish the job. Taking down seals and even baby whales isn't just part of the job description, it is the job. As much as I respect the gorilla's raw power and uppercut potential, the polar bear is packing a more dangerous toolkit. Think of it this way: the gorilla is a street brawler with brute strength and heart. The polar bear is a trained assassin with knives for fingers and battlefield experience. In terms of deadly efficiency, this round goes to the bear. Final verdict: who's taking the crown? Alright, it's Judgment Day. Who walks away the champ in this wild fantasy showdown? The brainy brawler from the jungle, or the frost-covered tank from the tundra? The silverback gorilla is no slouch with brains, brawn, and gymnast-level agility. It's like facing off against a bodybuilder who also happens to know jungle jiu-jitsu. This is one smart, emotional, high-powered animal that can lift, leap, and punch its way through just about anything you throw at it. But then you've got the polar bear. The heavyweight from the Arctic is built to survive in the harshest conditions on Earth. It's not just big, it's battle-tested with thick fur, a fat armor-like body, and a predator's killer instinct. This bear comes preloaded with deadly weapons and years of real-life combat experience. In a fair, face-to-face throwdown, my money's on the polar bear. It's simply got the edge in size, resilience, and lethality. Sure, the gorilla might land some solid hits and do real damage, but the bear can take those hits and return the favor with bone-crushing force. If this were a test of smarts or agility, the gorilla would shine, but in a no-rules, claws-out, teeth-bared brawl, the polar bear is just too much to handle. This is nature's cold-blooded bruiser, and in this fantasy fight, it walks away the winner. Quick takeaway: the jungle icon versus the Arctic monster. The gorilla is the undisputed symbol of jungle power: strong, smart, and surprisingly agile. It's like nature's version of a heavyweight champ with a brain. But when it comes to sheer dominance, the polar bear brings the heat, or rather, the ice, with a massive frame, endless endurance, and built-in hunting gear sharpened by life in one of the planet's harshest environments. It's got the edge where it counts. In a no-holds-barred fantasy fight, the gorilla puts up one heck of a battle, but the polar bear's size, toughness, and killer instincts give it the higher odds of walking away the winner. Are they dangerous to humans, Beauty, the Beast, and you? Let's set the stage. You're hiking in the African rainforest or kayaking through the Arctic, and suddenly, you spot one of these majestic giants. The big question is, should you start running or start praying? Silverback gorilla. Despite their fearsome appearance and freakish strength, gorillas are surprisingly gentle, at least by wild animal standards. Think less raging monster and more grumpy yoga instructor. They live in close family groups, eat mostly plants, and would honestly rather chill than fight. But don't get too cozy. A silverback defending its troop can go from Zen master to WWE in seconds if you make direct eye contact. Get too close to its babies, or act like a threat, it might charge, and when a 400-pound wall of muscle beats its chest and comes at you, it's not for a hug. Polar bear. Now this one's a different story altogether. Polar bears are not just dangerous, they are one of the few wild animals known to actively hunt humans. That's right, this isn't a bluffing gorilla, this is a stealthy, starving predator that sees anything warm-blooded as potential lunch. Unlike most animals that run from humans, polar bears will walk right up to you if they're hungry enough. They've been known to break into campsites, chase snowmobiles, and even stalk people over long distances in the frozen north. You're not just in their home, you might be on the menu. If I had to share a trail with one of them, I'd pick the gorilla every time. It's strong, yes, but it's got rules. It communicates, gives warnings, and wants peace. The polar bear, it plays by Arctic survival rules, and that means eat or be eaten. Moral of the story: respect both animals from a safe distance, and remember, in the wild, being the top of the food chain is a full-time job. Should you keep one as a pet? The wildest and worst roommates ever. Alright, Let's entertain the idea for a second. You're scrolling through exotic animal videos at 2 a.m. and suddenly think, hey, maybe I could keep a gorilla in the backyard or a polar bear in my pool. Spoiler alert, no, you cannot. Gorilla as a pet, on paper, it sounds almost doable. They're social, smart, even gentle at times. You've seen videos of gorillas playing with kids at zoos or looking soulful behind glass. But here's the reality. A silverback gorilla grows up to be stronger than an Olympic powerlifter with a temper. You're not walking that thing on a leash or teaching it tricks with banana chips. Even if you raised one from a baby, once it matures, it doesn't matter how many hugs you shared, that wild instinct kicks in. And suddenly your living room becomes a jungle battlefield. Also, gorillas need huge amounts of space, specialized diets, and mental stimulation all day long. Try doing that between Zoom meetings. Polar bear as a pet. This one's even more ridiculous. Imagine trying to house train a predator that can weigh 1,500 pounds and seize your dog as a snack. These animals are not just big, they're apex carnivores with instincts that say, if it moves, hunt it. Polar bears need vast territories, freezing temperatures, and access to seals, not piranha. You can't just build a giant freezer in your basement and call it enrichment unless you're a billionaire with your own Arctic island and a professional wildlife team. This is a solid no. If you want something big, furry, and fun to be around, get a Newfoundland dog. They drool less than a polar bear, cuddle better than a gorilla, and won't break your arm with a friendly pat. Gorillas and polar bears belong in the wild, or, at the very least, in expert conservation settings, not in someone's backyard with a kiddie pool and a hope for the best. Love them, protect them, admire them, but for the love of sanity, don't try to make them pets. If you had fun diving into this wild face-off, don't just vanish into the digital jungle. Hit that subscribe button to join our crew of curious animal lovers and thrill seekers. We drop epic matchups, strange facts, and jaw-dropping wildlife showdowns every week, so you won't want to miss a single roar, stomp, or chomp.